Hi everyone! In this quick video, we are going to understand what is a mode of production, because just like we have been saying, the purpose of this whole material is to understand how economy is related to historical change by the various modes of production that exist. Yet, first we have to know who came up with the idea of modes of production. This will be Karl Marx. Yes, this guy, one of the founding fathers of socialism. And actually, Marx's controversial ideology, aka socialism, is the base for an interesting historical perspective known as historical materialism, which is a way of seeing history but by analyzing the relationship between the consumption and production of resources. In other words, historical materialism studies how, over the pass of time, the relation between the consume and produce industry has changed. Now, we get to the modes of production. In Spanish known as modos de producción, the term refers to the relationship between bosses and employees on a line of production, which is basically when you produce something. So, for example, if we talk about a factory, the mode of production will be the relationship between the supervisor with the factory workers, meaning this that the supervisor is over the workers, yet he is still an employee of a bigger boss, the company in charge of that factory. It's also important to know that the materials needed to produce something are called means of production, medios de producción, and they are also involved in modes of production. Why? Well, the means of production are needed in order for the modes of production to exist. Without materials to produce something, there aren't ranks or anyone working. Now, according to historical materialism, there are 7 stages in human history, all of them based in the different modes of production that have existed or that will exist. We'll now present them to you, and for your convenience, you'll see to what time each mode of production belongs in parentheses. First, we have primitive communism. According to Marx, this was the happiest time in history since nobody had any possessions. There wasn't any private property and all humans were supposedly the same. Next, we have the Asian mode of production. This stage in history refers to the time where humans started controlling water, aka the first civilizations, like India, Egypt, Mesopotamia, etc. Marx says that during this time where agriculture and domestication appeared, the concept of possession also emerged. People started having their dogs, their crops, so basically equality was lost. Let's remember that Marx's socialist ideas are in search for one common goal: communism, the land where everybody is just the same and we are all happy. Let's go on. Our next mode of production is slavery. Slavery is the mode of production where one person possesses another human being, owning them as just like an object. With this, the production of resources completely bases in a master and a slave. Next, we have feudalism, which was the main mode of production of the Middle Ages. It consists of a feudal lord that owns lands and everything on it, including the people in them. These people are called serfs, which have to work for the feudal lord, giving him crops and serving him in everything he needs. Feudalism is considered more human than slavery, since serfs are not seen as subjects, but as humans. So, their interests are taken in consideration because they deserve to, as humans. As we know, in slavery, the need of slaves were taken into account just to continue having them alive. Still, these two modes of production have in common that the low classes, the serfs and the slaves, completely depend on their masters. Their needs are fulfilled by the ones above them, and even though in feudalism serfs have more liberty than in slavery, in which slaves don't have any type of liberty, serfs are still attached to the feudal lord in a symbiotic dependence. Now, we have our next mode of production, which is capitalism. Also known as the free market, capitalism is a natural consequence of the respect to private property and human liberty that emerged in Europe after the Black Plague. It consists in the voluntary and unregulated exchange of goods and services. The prices of the exchange rates are set by the supply and demand law, ley de la oferta y la demanda, concept that you'll see later. All you have to know right now is that capitalism is based in competition. In it, either you innovate and compete or die. Next, socialism. The socialist mode of production is basically the restriction of liberties. The government, in order to search for this perfect equality, becomes the only one provider of products. In this way, it controls the production of absolutely everything, which, in this way, we all consume exactly the same and are a step closer to equality. The problem with these governments is when they can't give you something, well, you starve to death. And this is what has happened in all the totalitarian regimes throughout the years. Lastly, we have communism, the maximum goal. Marx says that in the close future, by having socialist governments, we will reach the state of communism. And when this happens, the government will supposedly live, and we will all be happy in a wonderful world full of equality. Spoiler, this will never happen. To end today's lesson, it's important to remember that this is just how historical materialism sees history, not how it necessarily is. Keep in mind that Marx didn't actually knew a lot about the low classes, since himself was a privileged white and rich English man. His family owned textile factories, which gave them a lot of fortune. And if you're asking yourself right now, why did Marx wanted to eliminate the guys full of money if he was one? Well, that's a question we cannot answer either. Hope you have learned something, and please continue to the next point of the presentation.